Is this the moment of truth for a new Middle East? Will the region be reshaped by America, Israel, and perhaps Saudi Arabia? Or will this become a repository and a headquarters for jihad, Hamas, Iranian regime, and all of its proxies? Stay with us. Al-Shaq al-Asatlana, Our Middle East. Khaled Abu Toameh, my many decades friend and colleague and a teacher for all of us about the Middle East. What a dramatic moment we are witnessing right now in the Middle East. We have Israel about to take full control of Gaza City with complete American backing. As a matter of fact, the United States under President Trump has said that they want to establish a 10-year trusteeship for Gaza. And then we have, on the other hand, an international community that is pressuring the United States, pressuring Israel, sanctioning the Jewish state, anti-Semitism at an all-time high, and the UN about to host an unprecedented support led by France and Saudi Arabia, and with support of the full European Union for the establishment of a Palestinian state. So all of this, I would call it the pressure cooker moment for the Middle East, because the implications, Khaled, as you have argued for many years, go way beyond the Palestinian-Israeli conflict.
Then the unfolding Israeli military operation in Gaza could mark the beginning of a new era, the beginning of the end of Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and the axis of evil, and the beginning of a new era that offers hope. So we need to wait and see how this thing goes. It all depends on whether Israel can finish the job in a few weeks, in a few months. But what is encouraging here is that this is the first time that Israel has the backing of the United States to carry out such a dramatic, far-reaching, strategic move. And as you said, the Middle East is now at a crossroads. Are we going to let the good guys win, or are we going to let the bad guys dominate? And I'm a bit optimistic here, because if this operation succeeds and Hamas is defeated and disarmed and removed from power, which is not a very far reached objective now, then we will see many positive things happening. So we are right now at a very critical stage where the new Middle East is being reshaped. We could end up with a new reality in the Middle East within a few weeks from now, Dan.
Khaled, I want to pick up on your point here, because we've discussed this on the air, off the air for many, many years. And that is that, number one, the underlying assumption of your comment now is that Israel should, yes, take control of Gaza City and defeat the Hamas. Now, I raise this because the context of this whole dramatic moment is very messy. There is tremendous pressure in Israel by the hostage families to cut a deal with Hamas, in effect, asking Israel to surrender to Hamas to bring back hostages, and we completely side with the humanitarian, and ethical imperative of bringing back these terrible situation with our hostages. We need to get them back today, absolutely. The question becomes, what's the best way to do that? The partial deals have failed largely after the initial ones, because Hamas sees itself as losing. The only thing they have to hold on to are the hostages, both alive and dead.
That's why when Hamas says, I want a deal, we need to be very careful. Hamas wants a deal in phases. Even when Hamas talks about a comprehensive deal, they're not saying, look, within 3 days, within 1 week, we will release all the hostages, dead and alive, and relinquish control over the Gaza Strip. That's not what they have in mind, Dan. Hamas, we need to point out, is trying to prolong the process of a ceasefire. Their ultimate goal is to remain in power. Their ultimate goal is to show that Israel failed in achieving its two goals. Number one, securing the release of the hostages through military operations. And number two, removing Hamas from power. At the end of the day, it's perception. It's tuda'a, what you keep talking about, Dan. Hamas wants to be seen as having won the war. Hamas wants to be seen, especially in the eyes of the Arabs and Muslims, as having inflicted pain on Israel, as having forced Israel to its knees. This is
Mm.
the rhetoric, this is the thinking behind all of this, and that's why we need to be very careful. With all due respect to the families of the hostages, when they say, we want a deal now, let's go for it, this is being interpreted by Hamas as a sign of that these families want Israel to surrender. And that's why Hamas keeps echoing the calls, the protests inside Israel, the statements made by opposition leaders and even by families of the hostages, because Hamas is emboldened by the pressure on the Israeli government. Hamas sees it as a sign that it is winning, especially within the Israeli public opinion. So people need to be very careful how they speak out, how they make public statements in this regard, because Hamas is watching.
So that's exactly the point when it comes to this, what they call the French Saudi initiative. On the one hand, and here Hamas is looking very, very carefully. They're watching because on the one hand, for the first time ever, the Arab League, all 22 members of the Arab League, has said, Hamas, lay down your weapons and leave the area. But they couple that statement with something that the Hamas recognizes could be the trick of the whole thing, which is that they are conditioning the anti-Hamas statement, as it were, with the support for the establishment of the Palestinian state. So in a way, the second part of the declaration cancels out the first part from the point of view of Hamas, and that's why they're playing hardball. And that's why when people say, "Oh, put pressure on Israel," the answer is no. Look how little effect Qatar, Egypt, the Arab League, Saudi Arabia have on Hamas to get Hamas to do the deal.
You're right. The Arab League did issue a statement calling on Hamas to disarm and to cede control of the Gaza Strip. Senior officials of the Arab League have also made similar calls, but did they follow up? No. That's why Hamas did not take it seriously. Hamas came out with a few statements saying, we regret such calls and they don't really help. But if you don't if you don't follow up such calls with real action and with pressure, you're not going to achieve anything. So these calls by the Arab League, by the Arab countries, are not being taken seriously, not only by Hamas, but by many Palestinians. And Dan, the irony here is that if countries like Qatar and Egypt really wanted to put pressure on Hamas to end this whole crisis, all they have to do is just, summon the Hamas leaders who are shuttling between Cairo and Doha, and warn them, issue an ultimatum to them. But they're not doing that. We are under the impression that the leaders of Egypt, the leaders of Qatar, are not really putting enough pressure or real pressure on Hamas, and that's why Hamas is in no rush to sign a deal. Statements by the Arab League don't leave an impression on Hamas. Hamas is not intimidated by them; they don't really care because no one is banging on the table and warning the Hamas leaders. And Arab leaders can do that, especially the leaders of Egypt, a country that has shared borders with Gaza, and Qatar, which is hosting the Hamas leaders. Do you want to tell me that the ruler of Qatar has no leverage with Khalil al Hayya and Tahir al Nunu and Izzat al Rishik and all the other Hamas leaders sitting in Doha? We know that when Arab dictators want to take action, they do. And we know that Arab dictators don't like people who say no to them. But as I said, there's no pressure on Hamas from the Arabs, and that's why Hamas is not doing anything. But then the other question is, Dan, where is the pressure on the Arab countries, especially from the
United States.
Americans, from the United States, from the Europeans? We see calls by Europeans and by other people, and organizations, stop the war, end the war. Uh, you see, you get the feeling that the pressure is only on Israel, and we all know that as far as Israel is concerned, if the hostages are released tonight, the war will end within 2 days because the Israeli public is tired. People want to get on with their lives. The whole country is still in a state of trauma. The economy is being affected by this. So, those who live in Israel, and I and you, I mean myself and you, we are here. We know that the Israeli public does not want war. Most people just want to return to a normal
Right.
life and get along with their daily things. So the pressure should have been, or and should be, on Qatar, on Egypt. They are the ones that can put pressure on Hamas.
Well, here's a very important point here that needs to be made, and that you've sort of created a pathway to this point, and that is that with an American trusteeship, it means by definition there will be American military presence in the Gaza Strip for the coming time. Now, one way to defeat Hamas quickly or more quickly is to empty much of Gaza from its civilians in a voluntary humanitarian relocation, first proposed by President Trump as the Riviera Plan. And there are a number of countries that Israel is in negotiations with, and the United States, to take those. The one country that is right next door that can be of enormous help in northern Sinai is Egypt. Now, President al-Sisi has said, absolutely not. We're not prepared to take more than they've taken 80,000, some 80,000 Gazans who have paid $5,000 to $10,000 apiece
Some
to get
people
there.
say even 120,000. Yeah,
Gazans,
yeah.
some hundred, it could be up to
Since the
120.
beginning of the war.
So that's a very substantial number. Now, northern Sinai can absorb easily 250 to 500,000 Gazans. They've got tens of thousands of apartments that are empty and that are
Even
waiting.
on a temporary humanitarian basis.
Only.
Open the border.
That's right.
Why don't you want to help these people? I hear voices from Gaza. I talk to people in Gaza. They're saying, look, we're not asking the Egyptians to open the border because we want to live in Egypt. We just want to run away from the war. We want temporary sanctuary. We want temporary asylum. But we have no intention of staying in Egypt. So why doesn't Sisi, Abdel Fattah Sisi, open the border, let these people in? We saw refugees from Syria move to other countries, to Lebanon. They fled to Germany. They fled even
Absolutely.
to Egypt, by the way. Why are the Palestinians the only ones that are rejected by the Arab countries? I mean, why doesn't any Arab country want to help them? Why don't they want to absorb them? And again, we're talking about a temporary solution. We're not saying relocate them and that's a permanent solution. But at least, there's a war. These people are shouting, they're crying, they're trying to run away from a war zone. They're trapped. And no Arab country is offering to absorb any of them. And this raises many questions regarding the Arab solidarity, quote unquote, with the Palestinians. Where is Arab solidarity? I mean, lip service is not enough, and issuing statements is not enough, and having Al Jazeera broadcast all kinds of fiery statements, and you must remain steadfast, and you must fight. And I mean, this is crazy. The Palestinian people are paying the price. In addition to that, we also see, and we heard yesterday, we saw evidence of it, that Hamas is blocking Palestinians from moving from one area to another, especially running away from the war zone in Gaza City to the south. As if Hamas is saying, go back, we want you to die, because Hamas wants to maximize civilian casualties. That serves its own goal. So here we are, as you said before, this is a crucial moment where it's time for real action. You know what? I consider occupation to be a solution, by the way, and I've said this
Yeah.
a long
Full
time.
Israeli control to take over.
Israeli, non-Israeli, doesn't matter. Anyone but Hamas. And when you have, and I said this before at the beginning of the war, if I were Israel, I would reoccupy all of Gaza, establish a military government over there, a temporary government, and say, I'm in control. When you announce I'm the new government in Gaza, that means the other government, the Hamas government, is finished. And that also sends a message to the Palestinian public that there's a new sheriff in town, that Israel is not there for another day or two. And this would have given Palestinians enough confidence to walk up to Israel and say, Hamas is there, the hostages are there. And it would have saved the lives of many Palestinians and many Israelis. And when you are the government in Gaza, you are also in charge of humanitarian aid that comes into Gaza. And when you are in charge of humanitarian aid that comes into Gaza, that gives you leverage with the Palestinian population. So this is a case where occupation would have been good for the Palestinians. The occupation of Israel, it's much better than the occupation of Hamas.
Absolutely. And the from a perceptual standpoint, it's important for the world to see what in fact has been happening, which is that Israel has been flooding Gaza with more than 1.9 million tons of humanitarian aid that gets to the border, and 90% of it, according to UN numbers, has been robbed and hijacked by the Hamas and Hamas affiliates. Now, with a full what they call temporary military administration of and control of Gaza, the pictures should be of Israeli soldiers or Israeli affiliates handing out the humanitarian assistance directly to the public. This is the perceptual counterforce that Israel has not yet succeeded to accomplish.
Yeah, it's sad and also a mistake that we are nearly 2 years later and Israel hasn't done that, and this creates a vacuum in Gaza. And when there's a vacuum, Hamas comes into that vacuum. So don't leave a vacuum. The problem over the past 2 years has been that there's a vacuum. Israel is not in control, and Hamas is,
Sort of
somewhere.
in control.
Yeah, I mean, but it's not good. Someone has to be in Gaza and say, "I'm now in charge. I'm the governor of Gaza." It could be the Americans, it could be the Arabs, but someone needs to say it, and no one is saying it. And as long as no one is moving in that direction, for the Palestinian public, Hamas is still the government, and that's a mistake. You need to overcome this perception that Hamas is still running the Gaza Strip. You need to make it very clear that that's it. We're finished with Hamas. Let me remind you of what Hamas did to the Palestinian Authority in 2007. They staged a coup against the Palestinian Authority. And within a few days, Hamas announced, we are the new government in Gaza. And many people surrendered to Hamas, and even the Palestinian Authority surrendered to Hamas because that mere announcement sent a message that there's a new sheriff in town. There is no future for Gaza or for the Palestinians as long as Hamas and Islamic Jihad and Iran and all these parties are still active in the Palestinian arena. They have to vanish. And you know what? It bothers me, Dan, that Palestinians are still not rising against Hamas. That it's Israel that is doing the job. I would have wanted, I would have liked to see Palestinians erupt against Hamas, walk up to the Hamas headquarters in Gaza, drag the Hamas officials out of their offices, out of their homes, and tell them, look what you did to
How
us.
do you explain that, Khaled? I mean, there are enough weapons around. With the main opposition group was run by the militia leader from
Abu Shabab.
Abu Shabab. Now, where has the Abu Shabab clan gone recently? I haven't heard anything about them in the last month.
That's a good question. Apparently, the Palestinians in Gaza are either too tired, too afraid, or some people just don't care anymore, or they can't find the Hamas officials because many of them are, in the tunnels, or they have already run away to Egypt, to Qatar, to Turkey. But I was hoping after 3 or 4 months of the war to see a public an intifada against Hamas. Okay, we did see protests, but they were, they quickly faded. They did not last for too long, and that's a pity. I would have liked to see, the Arab countries say or issue an ultimatum to Hamas: if you do not step down, we are sending 15,000, 20,000 troops, Egyptian troops, Saudi troops, United Arab Emirates, Jordanians, to Gaza and we will crush you. We will throw you out of Gaza because you brought a disaster on your own people. Nothing. We don't see any of that. I mean, we do see condemnations of Israel, and that's why the war has been prolonged. That's why Palestinians are continuing to pay a very heavy price. Palestinians can also blame Palestinians because they had several opportunities over the past 2 years to rise against Hamas, to declare a new government in Hamas. No one is doing that.
Yeah, it's the case, and in fact, Khalid, we really need to point out that Gaza, Hamas, and Israel has a much larger implication than just Gaza, Hamas, and Israel. In Lebanon, in Syria, there is right now a very fragile, um, dramatic moment taking place between in Lebanon the forces of President Aoun and the Hezbollah. Now, according and they are watching very carefully about what the United States and Israel are doing on the in the Gaza theater, because according to the Arab media yesterday, the government of Aoun and the Hezbollah are reaching a ceasefire agreement. This is not good news because it means that Hezbollah will remain in power to a degree which they can also threaten Israel and others in the region. And similarly, next door in Syria, it's going better, and there is an openness, as we understand, between al-Shara and Israel. But the Iranian regime is in there deeply making trouble as they are via Hezbollah next door. So they're both watching what the way that Israel is handling Gaza, and that will have implications for what happens to Israel's north.
Absolutely. Then they're watching, and we're talking about Hezbollah, we're talking about the Syrians, we're talking about other players in the region. If you defeat Hamas and Hamas is destroyed and disarmed and removed from power, this will have positive repercussions for the region. It will embolden the Lebanese government vis-a-vis Hezbollah. It will embolden Shara and the Syrian government against, other groups in Syria. It will send a message to the Arabs and the Muslims that radical Islam is being defeated. I recall that when Al Qaeda was attacked by the Americans and later ISIS, the Islamic, it did have a very positive outcome or impact on many Arabs and many Muslims who felt confident enough to start talking against, radical Islam and these terrorist groups. So it's very important when you say they are watching, you're right, then they are watching, and they need to understand that Israel is not alone. They need to understand that America is behind Israel, that America fully supports Israel in its war against these terrorists, against the Iran led axis of evil. And if Israel manages to achieve its goals right now and defeats Hamas, this is going to help reshape the Middle East.
Yeah,
You will see more moderate voices speaking out. And that's very good.
yeah,
It will be a severe blow for Hezbollah, for all the, for the Houthis, and for all the radical elements in the region.
this is the case, and it really raises again the question or the importance of American consistency. President Trump has been very consistent thus far in his really unwavering support for Israel and Saudi Arabia, and I think that Mohammed bin Salman is truly a visionary and a reformist, and at the same time he's been very tough in recently with statements on Israel, and I think it would serve his own. It would serve the interests of his vision for a Middle East, the 2030 vision, which is completely his vision.
We should not be worried down by the tough talk. Actually, that's encouraging because the tough talk is actually or often precedes conciliatory measures.
Mm.
No one can accuse him later of being, too pro-Israel or of
A
having
Zionist.
concessions or yeah. So they'll say, oh, but he made very good statements, so it's okay if he now signs an agreement with Israel.
Mhm.
He hasn't abandoned his principles. He hasn't made any concessions. He stands behind all his previous statements. So I'm not very worried. And actually, when you see that, that's an attempt to muster support, to rally the people behind him.
Then let's go back from that reality back to what's going to happen at the UN, because nothing will change on the ground if there is this declaration of support for the establishment of a Palestinian state. Nothing will change on the ground whatsoever. The Israeli public, including many of our 2 million Arab citizens, as well as our 8 million Jewish and other citizens, will support the establishment of another Palestinian state, especially after what happened on October 7th. I mean, people are not suicidal to that extent. But the real question will be, what will be the international implications of such a of such a declaration? And the Arab world clearly doesn't want to see another Palestinian state that will only become a platform for Hamas and
If we
other.
remember former President Jimmy Carter, he wrote in his book, or I think in one of his statements, that most of the Arab leaders he met with, they all expressed opposition to the establishment of a Palestinian state. I remember that famous statement from Carter. I can't remember where he said it and under what circumstances, but it was widely quoted by many Palestinians, by the way, as evidence of Arab treason, of the Arabs betraying the Palestinian brothers. But as you pointed out correctly, Dan, we all know that the issue of recognition of a Palestinian state is not going to change anything on the ground. Actually, I've been hearing for the past few days that there's concern among many Palestinians that it will only aggravate tensions and drive Israel, towards possibly annexing the large parts of the West Bank or taking other measures. And I go to Ramallah a lot. I go to Bethlehem. I sit with people there. I don't see an open debate or a discussion about, the recognition of a Palestinian state. The talk over there is, when is Israel going to allow more people to come back
More
to work
work
inside?
permits,
Yeah,
yes,
this is
but
what people talk about. The discussion about recognizing a Palestinian state is taking place in Brussels, in Australia, in
Washington,
in Washington, in Paris,
yeah.
but while Palestinians on the street, and in towns and villages have other things on mind. It's not a top priority for most Palestinians right now. Most Palestinians know that this is not realistic. They look at the reality on the ground also. They know it's not realistic. They also read the Israeli public opinion, which after October 7 has dramatically changed. I mean, talking about a Palestinian state under the current circumstances for both Israelis and Palestinians is a ridiculous idea. It's unrealistic. It's just a waste of time. So the question is, why is the international community so eager now to recognize a Palestinian state? Is this really going to help the Palestinians? Is it going to help the hundreds of thousands of displaced Palestinians in Gaza? Is it going to help the farmer in a village, near Ramallah? How does it? I mean, these are questions that even some Palestinians are asking each day, and there are no answers to it.
At the end of the day, Khalid, what the Arab world, certainly the establishment led by Saudi Arabia, recognizes is that anything having to do with Hamas, anything having to do with the Iranian regime, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and and the other radical proxies is called jihad. This is the message that is unspoken in the international discourse, particularly in the West, that we are not in a situation of political or territorial conflict. We are facing jihad. The Middle East understands that they are facing jihad. The West doesn't yet understand that they are facing jihad. Israel, after October 7th, and the mass murder, torture, rape, and kidnapping of so many women, children, and innocent men, understand that this has become this is a religious this is an Islamic jihad against the opponents of these radical Islamic operatives, and if we understand that, the entire discussion and the entire direct action will change.
Dan, it's astonishing that after all these years, Westerners still think that this conflict is about a settlement, a border, refugees, water, electricity, a checkpoint, or a wall or a fence.
Mm.
And we all know it's not. As you said, this is a jihad. This is about Israel's very presence in this part of the world. And what October 7 reaffirmed for many people is that this conflict is really a jihad, a holy war to eliminate Israel. What happened on October 7 was that the state of Gaza breached an internationally recognized border and attacked a sovereign state. The communities, the Israeli communities along the border, are not disputed settlements or communities. This is Israel proper, even according to the United Nations. The people who were attacked, the Israelis who were targeted, are not quote unquote illegal settlers. These are Israeli citizens. Some of them, ironically, were left wing activists who supported the Palestinians and a two-state solution. So at the end of the day, when I look at this conflict today, sadly, I see that there is still a majority of people in the Arab and Muslim world, or I don't want to say a majority, but a large number of people in the Arab and Muslim world who have not come to terms with Israel's right to exist. And for them, Israel is one big settlement that needs to be uprooted. And this is the result of calls for jihad. It's the result of indoctrination. It's the result of decades of messages that are being sent to the Arabs and Muslims through the mosque, through the media, through the rhetoric. And this has to change. If it doesn't change, we will just continue revolving in a vicious cycle.
Absolutely. When we want to get out of that vicious cycle, and I think that our program, Al Shaq Al Awsat Lana, Our Middle East, is to expose and reveal the real Middle East to the West so that the international community, particularly the West, knows how to move forward in dealing with this tumultuous region. I think that's where we're dedicated to doing that, bringing nuance and bringing context. I hope we've done that in this program. It is a dramatic and critical moment for reshaping the Middle East, and this could be the real new Middle East, quite different from what was spoken about during the Oslo years of, I would call it delusion. This is real, and it's possible, and it can be reshaped. It really depends the way if people really see the Middle East for what it is, so we know how to act.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Dan. And let's hope that, next time we meet here, we will be talking about very positive things happening between Israel and its Arab neighbors. I'm a bit optimistic. We are now 5 years after the Abraham Accords. This is a turning point, it's a milestone. Are we going to expand the Abraham Accords, or will the Abraham Accords continue to remain in a stalemate? I think we need to work on expanding the Abraham Accords. And the way to expand the Abraham Accords is by destroying and getting rid of the radicals and the extremists who don't want peace, who don't want Israel to exist in this part of the world.
That's a good. I like when you're optimistic.
Yeah.
Rid the region of radicals and be mindful of its moderates.
Yep.
That's inshallah,
Absolutely.
inshallah, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Good.
Thank
Nice
you.
to see you. Thanks for this.
Thank you very much.